What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the Lost Whispers album, which is a secret Evanescence album that came out in late 2016, and it was kind of a stopgap filler project in between their 2011 album Evanescence and their 2017 album Synthesis, which was kind of like a hodgepodge record also. So I do feel like Evanescence is pretty good at putting out these placeholder projects in the meantime before they get to like their next body of work and that type stuff, because I reviewed another said project like this last month in March, which was Evanescence's Anywhere But Home project, which they dropped in 2004 to have people wait between Fallen and The Open Door in late 2006. And that's kind of the concept about it. Um, I like I said, they're pretty good at giving folks like treats and goodies and kind of interim projects as far as something to kind of have them wait when they take their sometimes lengthy gaps and that type of stuff. But it's definitely interesting. This project's going to get a high score, and I do feel like the concept behind it. The only real complaint for the most part that I have about this project is just the fact that it's not on CD. And I kind of look after it. I would have probably purchased this album by now if it had been on CD. But the thing about it is just the fact that it's only available on digital and vinyl, which neither of which platforms I enjoy as much as I enjoy the CD marketplace. That's kind of the concept, but this is a dope package, and I definitely would have to say I appreciate it's another top-notch project from Evanescence, and it's pretty clever just because not every single musician will drop their B-sides and bonus tracks and not every single musician will drop their outtakes and B-sides and that type of stuff. So it's good to kind of get that sort of momentum just to be able to say that there's just some extra kind of content and they didn't even have to put out any new music as a result. They did re-record the demo song from Origin, Even in Death, but apart from that, this is basically stuff you've heard before if you are a hardcore enough fan or if you know well enough. But that's just kind of the thing. So there aren't really singles from this project, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about Even in Death as if it's a single just because I feel like it's the new project on here. So Even in Death has a real haunting kind of feel about it, and Even in Death has a real haunting feel from it. And with Evanescence, that's kind of a natural situation, but kind of the situation about it is it really kind of is heavily afflicted with the concept of death this time around. There are definitely some songs on here that are surprising just because they're pretty morose, comatose, that type of stuff. It's interesting. I feel like it's a very attractive kind of format for this sort of thing. I do like the concept of getting some of these songs that are not quite as blossomy, and this is just not really so much of like a kind of frolicking kind of project. I definitely feel like it's once again perfect for like autumn and winter and seasons like that, and just kind of more in like a kind of more somber kind of sense. I mean, typical of like what happens. I mean, that's what makes Evanescence shine as much as they do, is just the fact that they take like particularly morose feelings and then transform them into moments that are just actually effectual, even if you are not going through the things that the lyrics kind of say in the song. Is still kind of underneath the context of they transform these songs into enjoyable moments, even if you don't feel the same way as they do in the song. It's still pretty enjoyable just to kind of have the infectious moodiness that they kind of have and stuff. So that's definitely kind of the point towards it. But Even in Death does that. Some other songs that are kind of as morose as Even in Death would be Together Again and the last song, I'm Wasting on You. There's just good ones for that sort of moment. And I definitely feel like it was surprising just about the Open Door. I mean, that's definitely a highlight. It's been 6.5 years since I've reviewed the Open Door, but I would definitely have to say to look that album up, because that one to me was a lot more haunting for the most part than Fallen. I haven't quite reviewed their 2011 album Evanescence yet or anything after that, but I would say between their first two albums, I would definitely say that the Open Door has it was just caked with a lot of haunting kind of songs and stuff, and I definitely enjoyed all of the outtakes from the Open Door on here, and there just weren't an overabundance of Fallen outtakes, but just to kind of say. But yeah, so I'll go ahead and talk about the 10 songs out of 12 I recommend, and then we'll go ahead and get to this. So the 10 songs would be Missing, Breathe No More, If You Don't Mind, Secret Door, Lost Whispers, the title track or the intro, Farther Away, Even in Death, Together Again, the last song, I'm Wasting on You, and Say You Will. That's quite a bit. I mean, really, the only two songs I didn't enjoy were just Disappear and A New Way to Bleed, both of which were from the 2011 album Evanescence. And I'll get to those complaints in a moment. But to talk about some of these highlights, the songs that were on Anywhere But Home, if you've seen my Anywhere But Home review I did back in March, both of these songs continue to be highlights. Even Farther Away was on Anywhere But Home also. So those are all three of the Fallen songs are basically from Anywhere But Home, and they just are not live versions. So I like the fact that this time on this particular album, you can get the new songs from Anywhere But Home, but just have them in the regular studio versions. I really feel like Breathe No More. I liked it live, but this is a definite kind of morose highlight, very similar to Hello from Fallen and that type stuff. I definitely feel like it has a pretty haunting and kind of like chilling kind of piano beat on there. And Missing is another nice one. The breathy kind of vocals in Missing are really nice also. I mean, you can get this probably for an easier find on Anywhere But Home, but I do feel like it's just a great package to get on this project, Lost Whispers. It's really nice. Missing just has a real kind of chilling and just kind of spooky kind of feel also. Farther Away is a nice one. Farther Away is more typical of like the Fallen Days, kind of more similar to songs like Bring Me to Life and Going Under from Fallen. Definitely something more in that kind of vein. It's kind of more of an up tempo, kind of mild club song, that type stuff. And a real nice highlight that I felt like was a nice electric one, almost electronic, but just kind of more in like a kind of speeding down the highway on like a motorcycle type feel, something like Matrix like and kind of more traffic induced, just kind of being in a vehicle speed and something like that, just kind of more out and about, which is surprising for Evanescence because they don't have a ton of songs like this. But the song that I'm talking about here is Say You Will. This was a really surprising one. I just really like the energy and the tempo of this song. It's really felt like one of the more wicked songs on here that was not. I mean, it really wasn't even that haunting. I mean, most of the time Evanescence is pretty haunting, but this kind of just came off as more of like gothic rock, where it's kind of just kind of jivey, almost club song in a lot of ways, but just kind of in like a more exhilarating sense. The Secret Door is another. This one had a real kind of nice beat on there, nice instrumentation, and I definitely liked the kind of whimsical kind of moodiness of that song. It was just a nice one. They're definitely, I mean, Evanescence really has some nice piano beats. They mesh really well with like these kind of somber and chilling kind of pianos, and there are some ones that do that, like the last song, I'm Wasting on You. That one's just like a whole kind of somber ballad. It's kind of a morose, comatose kind of ballad that's just kind of really wallowing and that type of stuff. Definitely, I recommend it. It is a nice one. Together Again is like that too. That's another one that's kind of morose, real bad, and just kind of the concept of that kind of thing. But I mean, these are very infectious. I mean, despite the fact that they're kind of wallowing, I do feel like the concept that it is, these are enjoyable. So that's something to be said about Amy Lee being able to do this. And her vocals really screech. That's the concept. I mean, it's not to say they're bad, and they aren't bad at all, but it's just the concept she can hit pitches that are just really chilling, and it'll give you goosebumps because of how good they are and stuff. She has really nice vocals, and the melodies on here just really give it. She's like one of the premier gothic singers, I would have to say, just because of how well that some of these are just kind of like really, I mean, you start to feel from it just because of the fact that the impact of it is good. And that's just kind of the thing about it. But it's just nice to kind of be able to get some of these, if you don't mind, kind of has like a nice backyard party and night venue kind of tempo. Definitely a nice party song on there. Has a pretty good energy. It's pretty high mid tempo kind of song in that sort of sense, similar to Farther Away and Say You Will in a lot of ways. Both of those are some nice ones. And then I also like the Lost Whispers intro. This is one that this was real kind of a spook of a song, and I really felt like the vocals and the melodies were just good in there. It was only like 58 seconds or so, but the concept of it was just that one really worked as like a good intro. So it's just good to kind of get those sorts of ones. The production on Lost Whispers was really kind of paced and kind of rhythmic in a lot of ways. Just kind of felt like a kind of interim kind of song that you would hear in like the bathroom of like a night venue or something like that. Just kind of worked in that like that sort of sense. So it's just a little bit of background description towards it. But yeah, so basically that, I think that about takes care of it. Me liking 10 songs out of 12 on here. And just to kind of say, the only other two songs I didn't enjoy were just the only two songs off this project I didn't enjoy were just A New Way to Bleed and then Disappear, both of which that just kind of separated Evanescence from their typical style. I kind of wonder about Evanescence from 2011. I think it's going to be a good project when I review it, but some of the new sounds on here I just didn't really like. The instrumentation on New Way to Bleed, I mean, they do some stuff on here where it kind of gets more dramatic as like the song goes along, but that doesn't always work when like the production kind of rapidly changes and that type of stuff. That's kind of what happened with The New Way to Bleed and Disappear. I didn't really enjoy the pace and the energy of Disappear. That one was kind of not quite as kinetic and electric as songs like Say You Will, and quite as infectious as Secret Door and the last song I'm Wasting on You and some of those type ones. But I wonder about Evanescence from 2011. I'm looking forward to reviewing that. But yeah, so to review this, to score this album now, me liking 10 songs out of 12, I'm gonna go ahead and say that I give it like a 9.5 out of 10. I normally, me only disliking two songs out of 12, I would give it a 10 out of 10. But I kind of feel like I have enough of a relative complaint about this project just to be able to kind of say that you can't purchase it on CD, and I just would prefer to get it that way. I would like to see the cool artwork that you would be able to have, kind of see like some extra pictures, and because I really like the album cover. It definitely reminds me of like the rabbit from Donnie Darko. Definitely has that same kind of smoky, ghostly blue type smoke in there. And it really reminded me of something I would have liked to have seen some further artwork that could have been with that project and that type stuff. And I just wonder what Amy Lee would have looked like and the rest of the band would have looked like as far as that kind of went, but it just didn't really turn out that way. And I don't know why it has to be such an austere project. Now, it's just kind of odd to me as to why that kind of is. I would have liked for it to have been on CD. I mean, the vast majority of this project I found enjoyable, and it is outstanding, but I can't give it a 10 out of 10 perfect score just because I don't have the proper means to wanting to own it. I need a proper means to own it and that type of thing. I would definitely like to get this on CD. So the manufacturers need to pump this out and we need to get this kind of going and such. But yeah, the social score, I'm going to give like an 8.5 out of 10 because I do feel like there are some moments on here, but a lot of this is more morose in the fact of just kind of being more isolated as a result of like death kind of happening and that type stuff. I mean, there's some moments on here that are just plain, I don't see the socialization of it. It feels a lot more of like reclusive in a lot of ways, somber in like a certain kind of sense, almost widow like, and yeah, almost widow like. But I kind of look after it and I just would have to say that there are moments like Farther Away, Say You Will, and If You Don't Mind, in some of those type moments that do kind of have a nice feel, but it's just a lot more kind of isolated this time to note that. I mean, it's not like I'm going to detract from the quality of the score of the album, but it's just kind of something to notice that it's not quite as outgoing as Fallen, and The Open Door was a lot more moody than Fallen, but it doesn't have like the same social kind of bops on here for really stepping out. And it just kind of, the combination of it not being on CD and this album not being openly expressive as far as outstepping and that type of stuff just kind of detracts from like I mean, it doesn't detract terribly like it's a bad album, but it just kind of makes for it to be more kind of insular and that type of stuff. That's just kind of the situation. So I think I said 8 out of 10 or 8.5. I think I said 8.5 out of 10 social. So that's just kind of the concept there. In terms of the future, like Evanescence has not dropped an album since 2021, but I'm going to start reviewing some more of these. We're going to see what's up with some more of these projects.